Anne Dujobanyan was born in Yerevan, Armenia, where she started her investigative journalism career. One of her first two assignments was exposing the violation of children's rights in orphanages and specialized schools. Since then, she has worked in television as a reporter and anchor, and she now writes numerous publications from her desk in California, specializing in Armenian projects. She has collaborated with the Husha Madian Project, which represents stories of Soviet Armenia and the diaspora expatriates who emigrated to the United States. The Armenian American Chamber of Commerce awarded her with the Women in Journalism Award in 2016. Please welcome Ani Dujobanyan.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction, Debbie, and thank you so much for inviting me.
You're
This is
welcome. I'm so
very
so excited to interview you.
just a small correction, if I may. The
Sure.
project that you were talking about, that is writing and representing the Armenian repatriates who later on immigrated to the U.S., is Hayrenadars, which means repatriate in Armenian, and Hushamadian is specializing in the life of the Armenian population during the Ottoman Empire,
Oh,
during
okay.
genocide.
Okay.
So,
Well, that
but yes.
that
I
gets
worked with.
me into my second question. But first I'm going to ask you, while Armenian is a democratic country, it does
Yeah.
remind me of my ancestral home of Ukraine.
Mhm.
And it has changed hands a few times. You almost need a playbook, including being under Soviet rule.
Yes.
So with that, what was it like growing up there?
So I was born in 1990, and when I grew up, the Soviet Union collapsed, and Armenia gained the independence in 1991. So when I was a child, when during the Soviet Union's last years, so I don't really remember that much. But when I went to school, it was still the Soviet Union, and I remember wearing the uniform, the school uniform. You might be aware of it because all the countries that were in the Soviet Union had to wear the uniform. So 2 years, I wore it 2 years. So that was the vivid memory of of belonging to that country. But then we gained the independence, and the war in Artsakh happened simultaneously. So my childhood memories are more related to that period of time, to the war and post-war period. And then I started my work as a journalist in 2000 when I entered to the university. I started working because I realized quickly that just getting the education won't be enough. So I have to have the practical work in order to become a journalist. So I started to work, and when I was graduating the university, the bachelor program, I had the offer to work in the television, the local TV station, as a news reporter. So that's how it started. But in the university, yes, I started to work with the investigative journalists. And the story that you mentioned, the investigation that we did with, I did it with two of my colleagues, journalists, and they are working as journalists. And um, I guess any story, any project involves investigation somehow. But that was my first attempt. I stopped doing investigative journalism. It was hard. Uh, it was very emotional, but it was great. So we did it with our mentor and professor, um, and we learned a lot from him. So
Wow, that was a tough first project then.
it was. I remember my mother telling me, I was so drained. I was emotionally drained. It was really hard, but we did it, and the impact was tremendous. So my mom was asking me, begging me not to do it, not to go there, because I would come home from that project, from the work, and it wasn't good. I mean, the impact wasn't good on me on a personal level. But I learned a lot, and I learned not to take it too personally, also because it's part of our job to hear other stories, other people's stories, to be involved somehow in their stories as writers. So it helped.
And of course, this area of the world is filled with difficult stories, and the Armenian genocide was a really dark period in your country's history. And in 1915, the Ottoman government embarked on a systematic decimation of its Armenian population, which lasted 8 years. So that is relatively fresh history. So, how does that sit in the shadows of a family and a community?
Yes. Well, it means, of course, a lot for the Armenian community in Armenia, for the Armenian population in Armenia, and the Armenian community in the diaspora. Um, and me personally, I am a descendant of the Armenian genocide survivors. From my father's side, they were from Syria, Kesap, and they some part of the family stayed in Kesap in Syria, and the other part immigrated to Beirut, Lebanon. They're still there. I have a lot of family there, and some of them repatriated to Armenia, the Soviet Armenia. So that's well, the genocide itself, well, being part of the genocide, being the survivors of the genocide, is part of our identity somehow. So I don't know if we have this genetic memory or not. There are a lot of researches about that, but just remembering, telling the stories, and telling the stories of that period of time, the survivors, is how we keep it alive. And we are not associating with the how do I put this? We are not victims. We don't. I guess this new generation is trying to tell the world that we are not victims. Yes, that horrible thing happened, but we are still alive. We will thrive. We are thriving, and we are just preserving the memory, and we will one day gain the justice.
Yeah, it's a tough history, and I think a lot of families in other countries can certainly relate to that.
Yes.
Is this why you've dedicated your life to telling people stories?
No, not because of the genocide. To be honest, I didn't want to write about it. It was too hard for me as an Armenian, as a mother, as a daughter, and as a sister to write about it, because for a long period of time I couldn't even talk about it. It was really hard. And then since I immigrated to the US, so I became a member of the diaspora. And I started to meet with these people and see how they're doing their best to survive as Armenians, to build their lives, the life of the future generation. And we want it or not, diaspora exists, and it will exist. I don't know about other countries, other nations, but I'm talking about the Armenian nation. So, and I realized that these stories are not really being told, because the older generation, the older diaspora, is kind of dying, and the new generation is doing a lot of great things, and almost nobody's talking about it. So I decided that I can be that person, because I know all these people. I constantly hear their stories. and I have the ability to write. That's something that's probably the most important thing that I have, that I know how to do. and, and I decided to do it. Well, of course, I could. Well, surprisingly, during this pandemic, I realized that I have time actually to do it after raising my family and doing other jobs and being a mom and the wife and everything. I had the time to dedicate myself to something that I really love, my passion.
That's awesome. So how different is Yerevan from California?
It is different. It's when you are away from your home, you can see things that you couldn't see when you were there.
Mm,
Um,
true.
Not bad or good things, just different. You can judge. I mean, not judge, but yeah, somehow you can judge differently about the people, about the politics, the economy, everything that is going on in there. I went there during these 15 years. I went there twice. Um, I was planning to go there again this year, but the pandemic happened. So hopefully next year. But it's different. You appreciate stuff, yeah, that you wouldn't appreciate when you were living there. And you would just, when I first moved here and I realized how the life is different here, in a very developed country like US. I felt really bad for my
Mm,
people back there, because uh, I wanted everything good that has this country has to be happening to them as well, because they deserve it. They're my brothers and sisters and everyone that I know and love. But we'll see. We don't lose our hope. So the diaspora and and motherland, they coexist together, and I want to show that both have to help each other, not to fight.
mm,
So because we can, but the diaspora should realize that without Armenia we don't exist. We would become just Americans or French or
mm.
Italians or anything else, but not Armenians. So we have
Yeah.
to do everything for our country to thrive.
So did you learn English in Armenia, or did you learn it when you came to the US?
So English is the third foreign language for me after
Wow.
Russian and French.
Wow.
Yeah, so I didn't really learn English back in Armenia. When we decided that we were going to move here, so we hired a tutor, very very knowledgeable young woman who taught me English, but the basic English. So when I moved here, I was already pregnant with my son, so I couldn't really and I didn't know anything here, so only my husband's family. So I couldn't go anywhere, I couldn't drive, and like the usual immigrant life, immigrant person would do. So i I started to go to college, to the community college, but it lasted very short because I had to have my child and raise my family. So I couldn't really pursue an education as is, and I decided to learn the language myself. So I read a lot. I took a lot of classes online, but not official classes. And I don't know, I just worked on myself. And then when my kids were older and I could work, I started to work um, places not related to journalism, but related to the communication, because that's very important in order to learn the language and learn the community. And I learned a lot about my own community from those works. I work at the customer service, at the communication departments. That helped a lot. It was like a project for me, a learning project.
So when you, I know it's, I can't even imagine what it's like for people to come here and learn a new language. Because even if you learn from programs, we do not speak in proper English. We speak in slang.
Yeah.
So that makes it all the more confusing,
Mhm.
especially when we use phrases that are commonplace, but
Like
if you
idiom.
take them literally, they sound ridiculous.
Yes, that's true. That's where you have to just communicate with people, different people, all the time. I remember when I first came here, um, I went to, there is a store, department store here. So we went there the second day when I came to America, to the United States. There was a woman, she was asking me something about clothes. Probably now, I don't remember now, but probably she would ask, what do I want, or anything like that. And I remember I was just standing there looking at her and not understanding any word she was saying. And that was really stressful because I learned that basic English. I should have understand what she was saying, but I couldn't. I just couldn't.
I
But
think also the older we get, the harder it is to retain, at least for myself.
yes,
I can't retain anything 5 minutes later
yeah,
when it
that's
comes to
true.
learning language.
I
You
know
have
that.
to put it in practice, right?
Yes, definitely.
So, uh, when you're talking to the diaspora in California and in the United States, is it difficult to flesh out some of their stories? Well, some of them may be reluctant to talk about their stories because they might fear some repercussions or something like that.
Well, there is very important thing that we need to know about the Armenian diaspora, that the Armenian diaspora itself is very diverse. So the Armenians came and still coming from the different parts of the world, different countries of the world. Well, and their stories are different. Some of them, I didn't meet anyone who would fear to tell their stories. I can't recall anything like that. But yes, sometimes people are not very comfortable, especially when I was doing that project with about the repatriation, because some people they were sent to Siberia
Mm,
during,
God.
yeah, that was horrible. That was another very emotional project to do, because I was just asking these people to tell me their stories. How did they survive in that period of time, in that era, and in that cold? I can't tolerate cold, so I would just think of these poor people. I mean, and they raised families there. I interviewed people who were born there. Their parents were sent to Siberia and they were born there. And they grew up there before the Soviet Union collapsed and they were sent
Mm,
back home. And
wow.
um, most of these people, a lot of these people were repatriates from other countries. So whenever the Iron Curtain was down, they immigrated to the countries that they were came from immediately,
Mm,
because they couldn't stay there. It was too painful for them.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, we don't, Siberia doesn't have a great reputation.
oh my God, no! I mean, and there is a movie. So the director of the project, my dear friend and journalist Tigran Paskevichyan, who started this project, and he invited me to do the stories of those who live here in the U.S. He made this project into 3 movies. So the
Mm,
movies are telling the stories of these people. These people are telling their stories in these documentaries. and it's really terrific. It's like an encyclopedia of that time, because we don't have too much history documented during about that period of time.
What is it called?
The it's I don't recall them. I mean, there are three movies. Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
That's okay. You can send me the link later and
There are no links. I think
oh,
they're just CDs. I mean DVDs, and they're being shown in
oh,
different
that's too
places.
bad.
Unfortunately. But whenever they come here, and whenever if you can
Sounds like a good
come to
pitch
the
to
US,
Netflix.
yeah. We presented the movie here. He did it in Europe, in Armenia, in Russia, even in Russia, and yeah, it was really
Hmm.
interesting.
So, what was the hardest thing to get used to when you came here from Armenia, culturally? What was the hardest thing to get used to? I know it was talking to uh, Czech and Russian hockey players that came here that didn't
Mhm.
understand English when they arrived.
Yeah.
They all had similar stories of how the things that they found the most difficult to
Yeah.
get used to. What was yours?
Um, Probably I'm thinking like almost everything was difficult. It was
They
really
said
hard.
number one was the food.
The
They
food,
couldn't get used to the food
not
because the
really.
food was so different for them.
The food is different. It is, but no, not the food. Probably, you know what? Getting used to the well, driving. Not the driving,
Mm.
the process itself, but driving and finding your ways, and getting used to the city and cities when you drive. Probably that, because in Armenia, I didn't even think about driving because we have like public transportation. I don't know how it is in Canada.
The
You're in
same.
Alberta, right? So we would just take a bus or taxi, but not to think about driving. And here you basically cannot go anywhere without driving, without having a car. So first, well, learning how to drive, and then learning how to drive on the streets and in the city. I think that was the most difficult thing. And then I missed my because I don't have anyone here. All my family
Mm. Oh,
is in
wow.
Armenia. Yes, it's only my husband's side is here, and then I have some distant relatives. They're relatives, but they're not my family. So I missed very much my family. I missed my country a lot,
Mm.
and you kind of get used to it, I guess.
So, what are some examples of things that we take for granted here in North America that you've never experienced in Armenia?
Hmm. Mm, well,
I'm sure there's a lot,
there's a lot. There's a lot of
but we
things.
do take a lot for granted here.
Yes,
And uh,
definitely.
yeah, it would be interesting to hear even just a couple of examples
Mhm.
of what we take, whether it's electric. I know you have electricity in Armenia, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
There's things that we think is going to be there every day that is not
Mhm.
so easy to get over there.
Yes, of course. Well, there are a lot of things in like everyday life just to use as a woman that make your life very easy,
Mm,
that are not in Armenia, unfortunately. Well, the cleanliness of the city, the law and order, that's what's very important to me, because you can just drive or cross the street very easy, and you don't fear about your own life. I'm not saying that in Armenia it's not like that, but it's different.
yeah.
It's completely different. When you live there, you get used to that, the way the country lives. But here, and then the freedom, that's what I like most about this country, that you're just free. You can do whatever you please, of course, with the responsibility. That's what I teach my kids every time, that the freedom comes with a huge responsibility. But that's not being judged for everything you do or for everything you say.
Hmm. So it
Mm.
almost sounds like some of these countries are like a small town, because if you live in a small town,
Yes,
that's kind of what it's like.
exactly,
I lived
exactly.
in a town briefly that was 750 people. Well, they knew what you bought at the grocery store. They knew when you got up, when you went to bed. It was suffocating.
Yes, that's true.
And you
But
come into the city and nobody really gives a damn. So it
yes,
was great.
that's exactly how I felt. But in a way, living in a small city or in a small town is somehow comforting, because I grew up in those backyards where everybody knew everybody, and it was good because we were safe.
Mm,
That sense of safety, I don't find it here. I can't,
yeah.
because the community is different, and then Armenia is mostly populated by Armenians, like 95% or something. But here we see every representative of every culture, every nation, and sometimes you don't really know how to approach them, and what is safe, what is not safe. But then back there in Armenia, everybody knew everybody.
Mm.
Just it's like the kid was being raised by the community, not only by the parents.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison. The safety aspect of it, yeah, that is interesting because we do. I mean, you get used to it.
Yes, of
You
course.
get used to it, and I know it's different here in Canada where I live than it is maybe where you live, but there are a lot of similarities. I mean, our
Mhm.
culture is basically the same. There are some differences, but we we we're very similar. And of course, as you grow, you have more issues with
Yes,
the population.
that's good. But again, I just want to emphasize this, that one thing that I really like here is the diversity,
Yes.
diverse cultures and nations. I just enjoy it every time when I meet someone, when I taste food, different food, when I talk to someone and they're talking about their culture, their religion, their I don't know, their food, their background. It's amazing. You learn so much.
Yeah, and the more diverse your friends are, I think
Mhm.
the richer you are, and the more you understand about the world.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I
Yes.
love that. Um, so tell us about that project with the Open Digital Archive, um, your collection there.
Oh, yes, Hushamatian, which translates into memory book. So the who founded it, Vahed Hashjan, they did this project. They're based in Germany. So I was reading about this project. I was reading about all these stories about people who lived during the Ottoman Empire and who later survived the genocide. And I was like, hey, I have a similar story. My great grandparents are from Syria. Maybe I can write about this too. But then when I was talking to Vahem, he said that the project is featuring also stuff, something from that era. And when I was talking to my father, he mentioned that my uncle has a lot of like everyday stuff that my great grandmother brought with her when they repatriated to Armenia. And I called him, I asked him to send me some pictures, and I was amazed seeing all these different. Well, there was a belt, silk belt that my great grandfather used to wear, and it was like something of a pride. I don't know. That's what I've been told. And there were some dishes and other stuff to make the bread and baking baklava. You know, that's an Armenian or Mediterranean sweet. So pastry. So we started the project, and it was right in the middle of the pandemic, so I couldn't travel anywhere. So it lasted a year around that time. So because I would just call my relatives in Lebanon, interview them, call my uncle and aunts in Armenia, interview them, ask my cousin to take pictures to send it to them, and then I would send it to Vahe, to Germany. It was it was amazing. I loved it. It took a long time, but I think it turned out well. At least the story is there. Uh,
Mm.
that's what they do. They just gather all these stories, and it's very important. They're
Yes.
digital. The most important part about the project is that it's being translated into Turkish as well.
Yes, legacy is important, and a legacy really starts family by family.
That's right. That's right.
In Canada, I know, like in Alberta here, it's we live on the prairies,
Oh.
even though we border the mountains in Calgary, in the southern part. But in the prairies, like I'm from Edmonton, and a lot of the communities used to publish a history book of that area,
Mhm.
and they would do like family histories. But these books, they while they might be hardcover and
Yeah.
they just go to that community, they never necessarily, they might have found themselves on a library shelf somewhere, but that's about
Mhm.
probably as far as they went.
That's true.
But
Yes.
still, it's important. I have one from my friend's neighborhood, which I spent a lot of time in, and it's kind of cool to go through there and see. Oh, I know that person. I know that.
Yes, that's very important, especially during this digital age.
Yes.
Having everything digitalized is making it very easier to
Oh,
access.
it's huge. It's huge because it can stay there even after we're gone.
Yes.
And I think it's important to get it down. I think, like with the Holocaust project,
Mhm.
that's why it was so important to document some of those people's stories while they were still alive.
Yes.
And I think the same should be for every facet of our community. Maybe we wouldn't be in repeating so much history. So
Hopefully. Oh,
yeah, so your writing journals journeys us through the lives of so many amazing people. Are these the stories that make your heart sing? Is this what you want to write about, that you, or is there something that you want to write about that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
um, right. Well, since I decided to write about the diverse communities, but well, that diversity starts from my community because I know my community well, right? And in order to write about other communities, I have to get to know them as well. So I am just finding these people, not finding. Well, yes, I am finding these amazing people, and I'm writing their stories. I don't know who would I find again.
Oh,
I
I'm sure there's a few out there.
there's a lot. Yes, there's a lot of people, great I mean, they're everywhere, they're in every aspect, they're doing amazing jobs. And you know, the interesting part is that these people, they're diverse too, because they're coming from diverse backgrounds, families, not only Armenian, because their parents are Armenian and Mexican, Armenian and Italian, and different people. So that's another important aspect of of diaspora. That's inevitable. As a small nation, yes, we are trying to preserve our nationality, but living in the diaspora with all these different nations, it's inevitable. So that's another thing that I really love to capture in my stories. I have a couple of stories like that, and But my main goal, I think, is going to be a documentary project. Uh, I don't know. I'm thinking about it. We'll see.
Question too. I was going to ask you if you're going to work on a documentary film.
Yes, I have all these ideas in my head, and it's been well, it hasn't been a long time. Well, I've been writing about all this for since I moved here. I was writing in Armenian for the Armenian newspapers back there. And then the project who Hayden Nadars we did, but there were just projects because I wasn't free. I had my family I had to raise my family. I was very involved in my kids' life, in their school. That's very important to me. And well, now they're a little grown up, so I can I can do more stuff for myself, and it's going to be ongoing. And my main goal is to learn to make other communities learn about my Armenian community, about Armenian heritage. So there are a couple of exciting things coming up. I can't talk about them right now, but my main goal is to work with non-Armenian newspapers and outlets to tell my nation's story, my country's story, my
Excellent.
story.
So I think that how can we get more people to, or more, whether you're a journalist or not, just more people to document their stories. I know, like, I tried to get my mom and my dad to talk about their histories,
Mhm.
but they just wouldn't.
They
So
wouldn't. Hmm.
so the only documentation I had an uncle that found some called a whole bunch of information from that side of the family, but really the only information I have about my dad's side is researching basically the history of Ukrainians that came to Canada. That's my basic only research, and figured it took a while to figure out where they even came from, my ancestors
Hmm.
came from. And then I learned a little more about that place, which was Shortau, uh, Poland, Soviet. Ukraine is like where you're from. It changed hands a million times. So
Hmm.
but we need more people to talk about their histories, but it's hard with the older people.
Yes, it is. It is very hard. I think we need the right approach. I don't know, but there always would be some people who wouldn't talk.
Yeah.
I
And
know a lot of
it's unfortunate because we miss
yeah.
a lot of these great stories, and it's how really it impacts our future as well.
Hmm. That's true. I know a lot of people a lot of genocide survivors who wouldn't tell their story because they didn't want to
Mm,
live through that again, like go through that again. It was
yeah,
too painful for them.
yeah,
And they just passed away, and the stories were gone with them. So
yeah.
that's very unfortunate. That's right. And well, my fault was that when my grandfather was alive, I didn't ask him anything. I was a child when he passed away,
Right.
unfortunately. But again, but his sisters were alive. His brothers were alive. There were nine kids in his family. So, but now I decided to do this project, and I just found some of my relatives who could tell me stories that they heard
Mm.
from their parents. So I'm very sorry that I didn't do this project.
But I can feel for you because it's the same for me. I was older, well into my adult years by the time I thought, oh, I want to find out what my history is.
Yeah. Well,
And some of us might have to go to ancestry.com to do it.
I
Anyway,
never did it, by the way.
me
Did
neither.
you?
Me neither. But I
Interesting.
have to thank you so much for this time. And it's so great to talk about legacy and family histories and all the work that you've been doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie. This is like amazing. This is my first, I'm gonna confess something. This is my first interview that that's not me who's conducting. So
Ah,
now I know how to feel on the other side of the microphone. So,
awesome. Well, hopefully it was not painful for you.
no, no, not at all. It was a pleasure, really. I don't know.
Thank
I'm not
you.
sure how I did, but
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate